Hello, everybody. Welcome to Office Strong. We're going to get started here in a couple of minutes. Just want to make sure everyone can see my screen.
Yep.
Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sherry, this is Marsha McCann at Mag Automotive.
Hi.
Are you going to have handouts that you can share with us?
Yes, in fact, now that you say that, yes, I will put them in the chat. How's that?
Perfect.
Let me just do that right now. We have a minute.
So everybody on this call, once I get those, I will email them out to everyone.
That might be a really large file.
If you can't put it there, Sherry, you could email it to me.
Okay, yeah, why don't I do that? Can I have your email address, please?
Sure can. It's MARCIA.McCann, MCCANN,
Okay.
the @ symbol, mag, MAG -IAS.com.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Yeah, I'll because I can shrink the file and get it up there. I realize it's didn't do that ahead of time.
Perfect.
I promise you I will do it. All right.
Okay.
And it is 12 o'clock sharp, so let me share my screen again and we will get going. Fine. Are you seeing the Office Strong slide now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, welcome everybody to our MoveWell seminar called Office Strong. If you've been to any MoveWell seminars before, you know that we tend to like to start out with at least an abridged version of the 5 key facts about your body's design. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can do simple things in your everyday life at the office that can help improve your movement and get rid of pain and improve body symmetry. Let me just give you a reminder about the 5 key facts about your body's design. First one is you're designed to be symmetrical. That means unless you were born with a bone disease or had an unfortunate accident happen to you, your arms are supposed to be the same length, your legs the same length, your feet the same size, your head sitting right in the center. If you look at the real world, we see a lot of bodies that are not symmetrical. The 4 of them we're going to talk about briefly today. The first one is called the sitter. This is a person who sits behind a desk for most of their day. An interesting thing happens to the sedentary body. The toes turn out and the legs get skinny and the abdomen starts to protrude and the upper back gets rounded. And these folks will come into my clinic with complaints of neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, just because. That's the bad news. The good news is it's very fixable. I also see these people in the clinic every week. These are folks that go to the gym regularly and look strong and can lift lots of weights. Interestingly enough, these folks will be coming into the clinic with complaints of one-sided neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, just because. It's not because they're weak, we found out. It's because that they take part in lots of non-rotational exercises. So exercises that make them strong, but don't necessarily respect the body's design. Another person we see out there in the real world is one we call windswept. Now, thank goodness their hair doesn't look like this, but I had it illustrated this way to show that this person is windswept to the right. It's as if the wind came and blew and her left foot rolls in and her right foot rolls out. The left foot rolls in what we call pronation and the right foot rolls out, what we call supination. And she takes 10,000 steps a day like this, and that can be the cause of one-sided neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain, just because. Now, you might wonder why someone would choose to walk like this. The number one reason is usually a previous lower extremity injury. Something as innocuous as an ankle sprain will cause one ankle to stiffen up and roll out. It will cause the other one to roll in a compensation, and now you're taking steps in this very uneven pattern that can be the cause of your pain. The number one asymmetrical posture we see out there is this one we call the leaning tower. This person we say is leaning tower to the right. Now, you might stand like this, or you might know someone that stands like this. I've had entire conversations with people that stand with their weight shifted to one leg. And I'll say, that's interesting. Can you do that the other way? And they'll say, sure. And they'll shift their weight the other way for maybe a minute or so. And before you know it, they're back to this one leg. In this picture here, this guy is showing me that his right leg actually feels shorter, and his left leg is actually the long, weak leg. Now, the right leg is shorter, not because it's actually shorter. It's not that his bones were shorter, but that something in his everyday caused some key muscles to tighten up. Things like your hip flexor or one of your back muscles. If they become short and tight, it actually makes the leg feel shorter. And then the other leg feels too long. And it ends up being the longer leg, the one that feels longer, that actually acts weaker and is prone to the itises. Arthritis, tendinitis, plantar fasciitis, bursitis, you name it, tend to end up on that weaker side. In this illustration, it would be this guy's left side. That's the bad news. The good news is it's fixable. So you're designed to be symmetrical in posture and in movement. And if you aren't, if one side's higher or one leg's weaker or one foot is turned out a certain way, all these can be the cause of aches and pains that happen just because, and they are very, very fixable. Another thing, key fact, is that you're designed to move in 3 planes of motion. You're designed to move front to back in what we call the sagittal plane, side to side in what we call the frontal plane, and then in rotation in what we call the transverse plane. And if you look at these 3 planes of motion, you realize that if we exercise at all, we tend to predominate movement in one plane. We know how to work really well in this straight plane of motion. Bench presses and bicep curls and French presses and squats and lunges and crunches and sit-ups all happen to teach us to move in this plane of motion. But if you look at real life, you realize it happens in a very different plane. Kicking a ball, throwing a ball, opening a car door, or even loading laundry from the washer to the dryer, almost every movement we do in our everyday life requires us to move in this transverse or rotational plane. And if you were to spend a day with me in the clinic, I could prove to you that things like Achilles tendonitis and plantar fasciitis or heel pain, rotator cuff tendonitis or tears, or lower back pain are all due to improper movement in this plane of motion. And so if we live, work, and play here, but we exercise in this plane of motion, then we shouldn't be shocked that our body has no idea what we really want it to do. So if everyone's getting hurt in rotation, does this mean that rotation is bad for you? And we say, no, bad rotation is bad for you. People will come in here and say, my back hurts when I play golf. Does that mean golf is bad for me? No, but bad golf is bad for you. People will say, my knee hurts when I run. Does that mean that running is bad for me? We'll say, absolutely not, but bad running is bad for you. This is a picture of the human body with all the skin cut off the back side of it. And you can see here that every single muscle runs in a diagonal pattern. In fact, if I peeled all those muscles away and revealed to you the disc that sits in between the vertebrae of your spine, you will see that even under electron microscope, those fibers run in cross-hatching patterns. That means by design, we are creatures yearning for rotation. But herein lies the rub. There are 3 key areas that you're designed to rotate: your ankles, your hips, and the 12 segments of your mid-back or thoracic spine. And you want to know where we're seeing injuries occur? The knees, the low back, and the shoulder. So you've all heard the saying that force follows the path of least resistance. That means if your ankle's a little stiff, the next time you go to turn to open a door, instead of the rotation happening down at your ankle, it just gets shifted up to your knee. And if your hip is a little tight because you tend to sit in a chair all day, then the next time you stand up and go to open the refrigerator door, that rotation that's supposed to happen at your hip gets driven up to your low back or down to your knee. And so the goal here with MoveWell and the MoveWell programs is to make the correct path, the path of least resistance. And that correct path would be allowing normal motion in your ankles and your hips and your mid-back. Keep that in mind as we go through the seminar here today. The number 3 key fact about your body's design is that muscles only learn the lessons we teach them. You might have heard that in order to have a pain-free back, you need strong stomach muscles. Well, I'm going to give you just a quick anatomy lesson. You actually have 4 layers of abdominal muscles. And if I hold this up here, this little gizmo, and I say, this is your spine, and I'm facing this way, and you have 4 layers of abdominal muscles, I might say to you, which muscle do you think is the most important to stabilize the spine? I think we would all agree that we wouldn't want to pick the muscle that's far away, but the muscle that's in close, right? So we're just going to give you a quick anatomy lesson. If I peel your skin back, here's the good news. Everybody has a 6-pack. This is your 6-pack muscle. For some of us, it's buried under a little bit of adipose tissue, but you have this muscle, and this is the muscle that does crunches and sit-ups really well. Now, that's an interesting fact because it doesn't do much to stabilize the spine. It's the farthest layer of abdominal muscle from the spine, so it does not do much to actually stabilize it. So we're going to peel that muscle away. The next muscle you see is a diagonal rotational muscle called the external oblique. It also doesn't stabilize the spine, so we're going to cut that one away. Now this one, the internal oblique, is also a diagonal muscle, and it begins to stabilize the spine. By virtue of the fact that it runs in a diagonal pattern, that means to wake it up, we need to drive rotation into the system. And the more rotation we drive into the system, the more active this muscle becomes, and the more stabilized our low back is. And the number 1 key muscle that stabilizes your spine is the deepest abdominal layer. It's called the transverse abdominis muscle, and it is virtually silent in a crunch or sit-up. In fact, studies show that what activates this muscle the best is rapid, alternating arm and leg movement. Walking, running, cycling, swimming, anything where your arms and legs are moving in alternate fashion quickly, that alternate fashion drives rotation into the system and creates a need for stability that wakes this muscle up. The good thing about this muscle too is that not only does it stabilize your low back, it actually creates a waistline. That's right. If you activate this muscle correctly, you actually pull your waist in from your waistband all the way around, and it creates some stability. Now, I've got some good news for you. If you are not into walking, running, biking, or swimming, you can activate this muscle all day long throughout the day by doing what we call a sternal lift. Pretend like you're getting your picture taken, right? So when someone points a camera at you, you do this interesting thing that the literature calls a sternal lift. You just pick up your chest a little bit, so you look a little bit taller, and that activates this deep abdominal wall. So imagine you go to the gym one day and you want to maybe do an arm day. You're going to work your bicep. You might decide that you're going to go grab a barbell and do some curls. That would be a good exercise for your bicep. But if you drop that barbell and pick up 2 dumbbells and stand up tall with a sternal lift and then alternate your bicep curl movement, you are now taking an arm exercise and turning it into a belly flattener because you're activating this transverse abdominis muscle. So remembering to act like you're getting your picture taken before you do an exercise or while you're walking is a really great way to activate the deep abdominal wall and stabilize your spine. The number 4 key fact about your body's design is that pain is not inevitable. In other words, I have people say this to me all the time. They'll come to my clinic and say, Sherry, my right shoulder's killing me, but I turned 50 this year. And I'll say, that's interesting. What year was your left shoulder born? Or they'll say, my left knee's hurting, but I've been training for a marathon and I think I just ran too many miles. And I'll say, that's interesting. Did your right knee go on those runs too, or did it sit at home on the couch and watch TV? I even have people say this. I have low back pain, but so did my dad and so did my granddad. So I think it runs in my family. Well, we so far have not found a back pain gene, and that's good news because I can't do anything about your age or your ancestry or your gender, but we can do a whole lot about asymmetrical posture and asymmetrical movement. That is very fixable. And then the number 5 key fact about your body's design is that when it boils down to it, it's almost always about the butt. The gluteus maximus muscle, the biggest muscle of your body, happens to be strategically positioned behind your center of gravity. Now, the definition of center of gravity is where all the forces come and act on a movement system and then get propelled out. For us, our center of gravity is just behind our belly button, just below our belly button, and just behind it a little bit. That means when my foot hits the ground and 2 to 3 times my body weight comes rushing up in ground reaction forces, it's meant to be dissipated by this big muscle right here and then pushed out, right? Everything stays safe if when I put my foot on the ground, this glute wakes up. And it's an interesting thing to note that if you walk, that's 2 to 3 times your body weight coming through in ground reaction forces. If you run, it can be 10 times your body weight in ground reaction forces. If you are walking upstairs, it can be 7 times your body weight coming up through your system. And so imagine all that force coming through. It's meant to come through the ankle, through these big muscles of the thigh, and then get dissipated here at the hip, load that powerful muscle, and then get pushed out. We say that the best athletes throw things from the center. They push from the center. They jump from the center. Everything's happening at the core. So the number 5 key fact is that it's almost always about the butt. But sometimes that butt doesn't come to play, right? We're going to do a little test in a bit. And when it doesn't come to play, it's like me telling you that you have to move out of your house tomorrow, and that's a huge job. You have to move out of your house tomorrow, and you have a choice. You can ask a big friend to help you, or you can ask a little friend to help you. I think everybody here would say, I'm absolutely asking the big guy. But if the big guy said, sorry, you're on your own, I'm watching TV this weekend, you might roll your eyes and grab your little friend and begin to move everything out of the house. Now, you might get it done because you're determined and you're industrious and it's important to you, but no one would be shocked if the next day you were in pain or irritated or sore or maybe even injured. And if you hobbled your injured body to the doctor's office and explained your plight, explained what happened, and the doctor said to you, well, it's all your fault. You wouldn't be in so much pain if you were just a little bit stronger. So why don't you stop at the gym and lift some weights? You would say, Doc, are you crazy? I wouldn't be in so much pain if the big guy would have come off the couch to help me. So in my 31 years of clinical practice, not once has someone come in and said, Sherry, I hurt my butt. Nobody comes in and pulls or hurts the gluteus maximus. What I see a lot, however, is people who tear their rotator cuff. That rotator cuff muscle is only just a few inches wide. And by the way, it happens to work in concert with your opposite butt cheek. This little tennis elbow tendon here also happens to work in concert with your opposite butt cheek. And then the tiny muscles, you see these tiny muscles of your low back, these work in concert with your same side butt cheek. In other words, the left side back muscles work with your left glute. And so what we're seeing is a lot of people walking around with what we call abs, not abs, but what we lovingly call here asymmetrical butt syndrome. That's one butt cheek smaller than the other. Now, you may not know that you have this because you get up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you make sure this front view is presentable, but very few times do you look back and make sure both girls are present and accounted for, right? You might think something's off when you buy a bathing suit and it doesn't quite fill out the same on both sides, or you buy a pair of pants and maybe they don't fit the same on both sides. That's because those clothes are cut off a symmetrical model. And this asymmetrical butt syndrome, this one butt cheek that's been shut off, I've seen on young, old, male, female, professional athletes, sedentary folks. It is regardless of economic status or activity level or fitness level. There are a whole lot of people walking around with one butt cheek shut off. That is creating a whole world of problems. Not even in the glute itself, but in these smaller muscles that are supposed to work with this big muscle and not getting any help. And we're seeing the breakdown happen in these small muscles. The next question that should come up is, why on earth would one butt cheek shut off? You don't just wake up one day, turn 50, and then one glute shut off. Here's the hot list, and tell me if you identify with any of these. Number one key reason why a glute would shut off is a previous ankle, knee, hip injury, or surgery. That means an ankle sprain, arthroscopic surgeries of the knee, total hip replacements, ligament tears of the knee. Any of these things, long after the pain of that surgery or injury has gone away, you are left with a glute that is shut off and it doesn't automatically wake up until you take it back to school and teach it how to work. I think it shuts off because it's the body's mechanism to try to get us to rest. But as you know, we just keep on moving as human doers, and then we do it with a compensated pattern. Chronic back pain. If you get up in the morning and you feel really stiff and sore, in fact, you have to kind of roll to your side and slowly get up and run to the shower and let the hot water hit you before you feel like you can move, you are a chronic back pain patient, whether you've been to a doctor for it or not. Studies show that on the side of chronicity, on the side of your low back pain, that glute is neurologically quieter and weaker and more silent. Asymmetrical rotation. We like to say the glute is like a good spouse. It loves it when you turn towards it. So if I turn to my right butt cheek gets activated. If I turn to my left one gets activated. Many of you sit at a desk and put one hand on the desk to mouse or to write. This would have you rotated to the left for hours and hours, and that makes your right glute kind of shut off and get sleepy, even as your left one stays awake. And then you get out of your chair at the end of the day and you want to go take a walk or ride a bike. And now you're doing it without the advantage of having both glutes working. You've got one butt cheek shut off. So you'll see in a lot of our programs, we want to restore your ability to turn right to left equally. It's a good way to make sure your glutes are working. Every muscle in the body has an opposite or an antagonist. The opposite of the glute muscle happens to be the hip flexor. A tight hip flexor is a cause of so many things, lower back pain being a major one of those things. And if your hip flexors are tight, again, from sitting too long or walking with your toes turned out, those are the two key culprits of tight hip flexors. Your hip flexors will become tight and it will neurologically silence your glute. That means you can be doing all sorts of great glute work, squatting and lunging, and it's not as effective as it could be because your hip flexors are tight. And then we talked about the deep abdominal wall, that transverse abdominis muscle that activates or that stabilizes your spine in the front. You have a deep muscle in the back as well that stabilizes, and those muscles being weak are correlated with a glute that's shut off. Interestingly enough, if you want to activate the important muscles on your back, you have to have a weight-bearing spine. That studies have shown that sitting or standing rotational movements is what best activates those deep back muscles. I just bring this to your attention because if you've had back pain and you are looking up programs online, sometimes they have a lot of exercises with you lying on your back or lying on your stomach. And though these achieve some goals in eliminating back pain, they don't prevent it from coming back because those don't particularly wake up the muscles that will stabilize your spine and prevent that pain from coming back. So the number 5 key fact about your body's design is that it's almost always about the butt. I want you to keep that in mind as we press forward here and try to find some cool new things for you to do at your workplace. I have this slide up here. Maybe you're standing at your desk and you can do this. I'll do a quick run through here of a mirror test, but the mirror test is something you should do periodically. If you're in the privacy of your own home, you can stand scantily clad in front of a mirror. And what you want to do is kind of stand and wiggle your arms and legs back and forth and land in your most natural standing position, and then open your eyes and see what you see. Some of the things we look for is one shoulder higher than the other? Is one foot turned out more than the other? Is one foot placed in front? So these are some cues that if you're looking a little crooked in the mirror, chances are there are things you can fix to get rid of those asymmetries that may be the cause of an ache or a pain. So let's try some movement tests here. Just some that I think I picked a couple here that you can try yourself. So stand up at your desk. I can't see any of you. I just have me on the screen. So just stand up, and you want to stand with your feet hip width apart and toes pointed straight ahead. So you want to make sure your toes are not turned out like this. You want them straight ahead, knees unlocked. And then I just want you to tighten one butt cheek, just one butt cheek. You should be able to tighten each glute separately, tighten the right one, Tighten the left one, squeeze them as tight as you can for 5 seconds and ask yourself, are those the same? A lot of people are shocked to find out that they can really tighten one butt cheek, but they can't tighten the other one. And that glute shutoff can be the cause of an ache or a pain. Here's the good news before we get off this slide. Here's how you fix it. You stand with your feet hip width apart, toes pointed straight ahead. Let's say I couldn't tighten my right glute. I'm going to turn my body to the left. So you turn away from the one you couldn't tighten, and then you squeeze that glute tight. Many of you can activate it if you're turned away from that hip. And then after you get it woken up that way, you turn a little bit closer, squeeze the glute again for 5 or 6 seconds, relax, get a little closer to neutral, squeeze it again. If you practice that, by the end of the day, you will have it, and your silent glute will have been woken up. I will remind you that a silent glute is oftentimes the cause of neck pain, back pain, knee pain, shoulder pain. So getting it to wake up is a key thing to start doing. All right, let's try this wrist flexibility test. I want you to sit in your chair, put your thumbs in front of you, or put your hands in front of you, put your thumbs in your palms, and then wrap your fingers around your thumbs. And then drive your hands to the floor like this. See how I'm bending my wrist? You should be able to do this and feel nothing. So if you feel a tightness on the thumb side of your wrist, and if it's worse on one side than the other, that is a sign of a tendonitis starting in your thumbs, on the thumb side of your wrist. Now let's just try something. I want to remind you that there are 3 key areas of rotation where you're designed to rotate: the ankles, the hips, and the thoracic spine. And the closest rotational spot to the hand and wrist happens to be the thoracic spine. So we're going to put something to the test here. I'm going to teach you an exercise that shows you how to mobilize the thoracic spine in 3 planes of motion. And we're only going to have to do 6 repetitions, because the studies show that it only takes 6 repetitions to start to teach the body a movement lesson. So cross your arms like a genie, sit up really tall, and then without moving your head, you're going to lift your arms up over your head. 1 and down. 2. This is the picture on the left. 3 and 4. 2 more. 5. Last 1. 6. All right, you shake that out, and then you do it again. Now we're going to do the middle picture. So lift your arms up, and you're going to bend right and left. That's 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, last 1, 6. All right, shake that out. We can do the last one. That one probably felt a little harder. Now we're going to do the third one, which is going to get our thoracic spine to move in rotation. Arms like a genie again, up over your head, turn as far as you can to the right and far as you can to the left. That's 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 2 more, 5, last 1, 6, and drop your arms down. Now let's try that test again. Whoop, let me do this. Put your hands out in front of you, thumbs in your palms, wrap your fingers around your thumbs, and drive your hands to the floor. Does that feel better for anybody? If it felt better to you, then that impending thumb tendonitis that you felt early on isn't due to an actual problem here. The symptoms are here. The problem is a lack of movement in your closest rotational spot that is driving more tension to the small tendons of your hand and wrist. Now, many of you have probably never heard of de Quervain's disease, which is what that test tests for. That's tendonitis of the thumb tendons. But many of you have heard of the problem just around the corner called carpal tunnel syndrome. A lot of times carpal tunnel syndrome is also due to lack of motion in this key rotational spot. All right, well, you were here to find out what you could do at the office to try to prevent or take care of some of these aches and pains. And let's just face it, work can be overwhelming, especially working from home. We've seen an uptick in patients coming into the clinic with low back pain and neck pain because they're sitting and not getting up and walking to meetings, but they're just sitting meeting after meeting, and they're starting to have their asymmetries show up in aches and pains. You don't have time, a lot of time to do the exercises. So our goal today for the remainder of the time is to give you what we call life hacks. You know, a life hack is a strategy or a technique adopted in order to manage one's time and daily activities in a more efficient way. And so today, I want to introduce you to 4 Move Well life hacks, and they're wrapped up in what we call the 4 S's: standing strong, stretching, straightening, and striding. Standing strong, stretching, straightening, and striding. Let's look at standing strong. So standing strong isn't just about standing totally straight, but it's adopting a posture of strength. And this standing strong posture, which we'll talk about how to get in a minute, is the posture where your circulation and your breathing is optimized. It's also the posture that limits excessive joint pressure on any one joint. And so learning to stand strong is important. How do you know if you're standing strong? You can do the wall test. This picture on the left shows a perfect wall test. There should be 2 to 3 inches between the wall and your low back and the wall and your neck. Otherwise, your head, your upper back, your butt should touch that wall. Many of us, if we stand on a wall, will feel our upper back touching the wall, but our head and our butt are nowhere near. Or we might get our butt on the wall with our upper back, but then our head's nowhere near. This is a sign, by the way, that the upper back, the thoracic spine, is a little bit stiff. And many times that is the reason why people are not standing tall. So how do we stand tall? Here's strength hack number 1. Did you know that when you stand, there should be 4 points of contact with the ground, of contact of your feet on the ground, and they're kind of depicted here by these blue circles. So if you are to stand barefoot without shoes on and kind of just assess where you're feeling the pressure, a lot of times people are feeling pressure only on 2 of the pillars. It's typically the outside pillars of your foot and not the 4. Do what you have to do to try to get 4 points of contact on the ground, and you will begin to see how far off normal standing you are. The good thing is, by getting 4 pillars of your foot on the ground, you begin to activate the biggest muscle of your body, the gluteus maximus, the butt that we were talking about earlier, that when it's shut off is oftentimes the cause of an ache or pain. So walking around barefoot for a period of time can be an excellent thing for you to do. In fact, the more supportive your shoes are, the less you are able to correct this position. I'm just going to show you my shoe. This is the shoe I work in all day, and it twists. Do you see how mobile my shoe is? I only work in shoes that I can twist in half, because then I know my foot can make the effort to get all 4 pillars of the foot on the ground. Strength hack number 2, when you stand, your knees should be unlocked. Now, if you're not sure, stand up and try to lock your knees. If you can't lock them, then that means they are already locked. But you should, normal active standing would deem that you stand and your knees are slightly unlocked. This is a position of activity for the big muscles of your thighs and your butt. If you stand with your knees locked out, you can stand like that for 8 hours a day, but you're doing it without the activity of your big muscles, and all the forces then coming up from the ground reaction forces settle into your low back. So you can really quickly change the way your body feels in standing by simply making sure that your legs are unlocked. Now, if you're one of those folks that stands and one knee's locked and the other one's unlocked, chances are you have one leg that's feeling slightly shorter than the other. The leg that feels a little longer happens to be the unlocked knee, right? But make sure that you unlock your knees when you stand. This will activate your glute. And then we talked about it earlier already, but the way to get your head up is not so much to take a head that's forward to your shoulders and try to push it back, but it's to practice what we call a sternal lift. Just picking your chest up, the kind of sternal lift that you would do when someone points a camera at you. This sternal lift activates the appropriate muscles, and it actually makes your head lighter on your shoulders. I'm going to take a second here to talk about tension headaches. Some of you might get headaches and tension headaches, and they tend to be at the back of your head. Sometimes they're at the back of the head and it's at the side of on the side of one head, on one side of your head, right? And this happens to the people who, when they look in the mirror, one shoulder's higher. So imagine this is me, one shoulder's higher, and then I also sit a little slouched. So now I have my head forward, my neck is kind of crunched, and then my shoulders higher. And then I wonder why when I get mad at my boss, my head starts to hurt just on one side. You are giving yourself a Charlie horse in this muscle called the upper trapezius. You want to give yourself a Charlie horse? Here's what you do. You take a muscle, you put it in a short position for a long period of time, and then you contract it. And that's how you get a Charlie horse or a cramp, right? So getting your chest up tall and making sure your shoulders are level, our program, exercise program at the end of this is going to show you the best exercises to level your shoulders. This will help you maintain that proper, strong standing posture. Oh yeah, and when you get your chest up tall, I will make this point, it activates that deep abdominal muscle, the transverse abdominis, that actually creates a waistline. All right, number 2, we got to stretch. So number 1 is standing strong. Number 2, we got to stretch. I don't do this stretch. This is just kind of a funny picture, but stretching is kind of key. Now, your question might be, how do we stretch? What exactly is flexibility? Do I hold stretches for 5 minutes? Do I have to stretch for 30 minutes? Do I stretch all the muscles of my body? That could take a long time. Is all stretching the same? I'm here to tell you that there are 2 types of stretching. There's passive stretching. This is more traditional stretching where you might sit down and stretch one muscle at a time. This passive stretching works on what we call the plastic length of a muscle. It does stretch out a muscle, but you're basically taking, it would be like taking a leather belt and stretching it. And then after you stop stretching it, it might contract a little bit, right? So this kind of stretching loosens you up, but it's not the kind of stretching that keeps you flexible, right? This is just taking a muscle and rote stretching it. And I'm gonna tell you here today that there's a better way to stretch, and it's what we call dynamic stretching. Now, postures like yoga postures, standing stretches are all really good to help you not only lengthen a muscle, but teach a muscle to work long. That's a key thing. When you do a yoga pose, if you've ever taken part in a yoga class, you realize they'll ask you to bend forward or bend to the side, and they never want you to prop up. In other words, you are stretching a muscle as far as you can stretch it and control that movement. Then you usually take some deep breaths at the end of that stretch. In that moment that you're taking those deep breaths, you're teaching your muscle to work long. I cannot emphasize enough. We don't just want to take muscles and stretch them. We want to teach them to work long. And if you can do that, if you can teach the muscle a new lesson, then you don't have to stretch every day and you'll still maintain flexibility. So dynamic stretching, like yoga poses, teaches muscles to work long, and they are preferred over doing the passive stretching of stretching one muscle at a time and sitting on your butt and just kind of passively stretching the plastic range of the muscle. Stretch hack number 2. Here's the good news. 30 seconds is all you need to maximize stretching a muscle. So I had actually read this in a physical therapy journal years and years and years ago, that 30 seconds was all you need. Now, that was so eye-opening to me because prior to that, I had started taking yoga classes. Now, back when yoga and Pilates were just becoming in vogue, people would ask me my opinion, and I would say, I don't really have time to figure that out. And then I decided I was going to take Pilates classes. It was a Pilates mat class, and then an Ashtanga yoga class. And I'm going to tell you, I became a huge fan of yoga poses for this reason. Not only was I getting flexibility, but I would do a stretch to one side, and then I would do a stretch to another side, and they would have me breathe, take 5 deep breaths, and then would say, breathe in for 3 seconds and breathe out for 3 seconds. 5 times 6 seconds is 30 seconds. And we would do one stretch to each side, one kind of stretch to each side. And as I progressed through, I realized that I was the person that could never touch their toes. And after taking yoga seriously for just even a few months, even now, when I'm not stretched out, I can touch my toes. I apparently have taught my muscles how to work long in just 30 seconds for each stretch. So it's good to know if you're busy, you do not need to do a lot of stretching. The other cool thing about yoga poses is that you're not just stretching one muscle, you tend to be stretching a myriad of muscles because you're standing and moving in certain positions. Stretch hack number 3, if you really wanted to maximize your time with stretching, stop thinking about, I have to stretch my hamstrings, then I have to stretch my calves, then I have to stretch my quads. Think about stretches that put you in positions of squatting, lunging, pushing, and pulling. These types of stretches. In fact, these 2 stretches here pictured stretch all the muscles of the back side of the torso and all the muscles on the front side of the torso, as well as certain muscles of the leg, all in one stretch. So imagine doing 30 seconds of each of these. 1 minute of stretching has benefited a lot of muscles in your body already. So if you're in a pinch for time, stretch hack it by not doing singular muscle stretches, but adapting stretches that move multiple joints at the same time. All right, one last thing before we leave the stretching thing. Every muscle in the body has an opposite, by the way. And if one muscle is short and tight, its opposite is long and weak. We talked about that earlier with the hip flexor being tight and the glute shutting off. A great example here is tight calf muscles, the muscles on the back of your lower leg. If they're tight, they will weaken this leg in the front. I bet you there's been at least some people in this room who have had shin splints. Shin splints are a pain in the front of your leg coming from a muscle that feels weak or overworked. A lot of times you can get rid of shin splints if you simply stretch your calves. And so if you're feeling an ache or a pain, certain pain in your shoulder, if you stretch the opposite muscle, many times it will take the load off the weaker muscle and get rid of pain. All right, number 3 hack out of 4, we got to talk about straightening, or more importantly, symmetry, right? We sit at our desks, laptops tend to be really low, and we tend to be hunched over for a long period of time. How can we do some things to straighten ourselves up? This is one interesting fact. You have fascia. Fascia is this saran wrap-like layer. It's as if someone cut a big piece of saran wrap and dropped it on top of your head, and it coated every part of your body. The fascial system connects our bodies from head to toe. This picture here is the big picture on the left is what we call the superficial back line. This is the line of fascia that comes from the bottom of your feet all the way to the top of your head to the front of your scalp here. This is the connection between having tight calves and getting headaches. It's an interesting connection, and it actually can be fixed very easily. You'll see him standing on a half foam roll here. This is 3 inches high. If you stand on something with your toes on a 3-inch high block here, you should be able to feel nothing in your calves. Many of you will do this and feel extreme tightness, so much so that your butt might stick out in the back. That tightness down here, like a sweater, if I have tightness down below, it creates tension up top. This is where the pain is. The way I fix the pain is not to do anything up here, but to release the tension down below. And so straightening yourself out in parts starts at the feet. This is a great hack. 1 minute stretch, 30-second stretch even, standing with the balls of your feet on a 3-inch high foam roll will stretch out your calf muscles and relieve tension all the way up in the upper back and head and neck area. It's one of our favorite fixes for tension headaches. Remember earlier I had you do a mirror test and I asked you if one shoulder was higher than the other. Even if you didn't do that test, one shoulder is higher than the other if you tend to put everything on one shoulder when you grab things out of the car. Your gym bag, purse, your computer bag, if you're hiking it all on one shoulder, you are putting that all on the higher side. This exercise called the wall wash is the #1 exercise we know to actually level your shoulders. You reach up to one side as you shift your weight. You'll see here that she's planting her right foot as she's pressing her right hand towards the ceiling. And we call it a wall wash because we just have people put washcloths on their hands and move on a wall because they can slide their hands up. You can just as easily do this without a wall. But the point is that it stretches a muscle that comes from your rib cage down to your pelvis. And that is the culprit muscle that when it's tight will make your pelvis higher and will make your shoulder higher on that side. Incidentally, a higher shoulder on one side is often the cause of rotator cuff tendonitis, chronic headaches, cervical pain, neck pain, and upper back pain. So it behooves us to fix it. And this doing 10 to 12 repetitions of a wall wash every day can help stretch out the correct muscles and level your shoulders. We did this exercise earlier. This exercise we called STEMS. STEMS stands for sitting, thoracic extension movements. And you might remember we only did 6 repetitions in each plane of motion. 6 repetitions allows you to open up your upper back in all 3 planes of motion. We have lots of people now doing this at their desk when they take a 30-second break from whatever they're doing, maybe in between meetings. If you do this daily, just 6 repetitions each, it will set your head straighter on your shoulders. This illustration on the left is really compelling. The more forward your head is, the heavier your head gets to your upper back muscles. So that if you have this forward slouch, if you're failing the wall test, chances are your head feels very heavy on your shoulders, and it is the reason why you're getting neck and upper back pain. All right. The chest neck connection, all right? So the head sits, if the head sits forward, it feels heavier. What we want is your head sitting on your shoulders. Another key thing to look at in the mirror is when you stand in your normal standing position, do you see knuckles? If you see knuckles, it means that your upper back is probably rounded. Proper posture would denote that you do not see any knuckles at all. You only see the thumb and the side of the index finger. If you stand and this is where your hands are, then your upper back is probably mobile and your head's probably sitting in the right spot. So take a look in the mirror and see if you see knuckles. And if you see more knuckles on one hand than the other, then it means you are twisted or rotated a little bit, and that also can be fixed. Here's another interesting thing about your neck, because if you look up neck exercises, it's a lot of our neck moving on our body, right? You'll see exercises where you turn your head to the left and turn your head to the right and tilt your head to the left and tilt your head to the right. Those are all fine and good, but we're all about trying to teach the body how it's supposed to move in real life. And in real life, we don't do a lot of these head on body movements. In fact, we do quite the opposite. We do what's called body on head movements. So that when I reach one arm up, this is the same as me tilting my head to the side. If I pull one arm back, this is the same as me rotating my head to the left, you see? So doing exercises that move your body underneath a stationary head is the quick way to get your head to start feeling like it's sitting in the right spot. Way better than just doing exercises where you're kind of tilting your head and turning your head in what feels not a natural activity. All right, as we close off here, the number 4 hack is striding. How do we walk? When the foot hits the ground, everything changes. So you might sit straight, you might even lie straight, but your body tells you what's really happening once your foot hits the ground. And so I want to talk to you about what proper walking looks like. Did you know that the proper walking stride would deem that when your feet are hitting the ground, they're only 2 to 4 inches apart? You got to keep it narrow. In fact, this 2 to 4 inches apart between your feet makes it so that when you walk, your arms swing and your trunk turns and you drive rotation into the system that activates the big muscles of your body. If you tend to walk with your feet 4 to 6 to 8 inches apart, and people who tend to do that also tend to toe out or roll to the outside of their feet, these are folks that are walking without the benefit of activating the biggest muscle of your body. You'll walk miles like this without your quads working and without your butt working. And that is why you can walk, you get it done, but then you start to feel joint stiffness in your feet or your ankles or your low back afterwards. So stride hack number 1, make sure you keep it narrow, 2 to 4 inches apart between your feet and your toes pointed straight ahead. Some of you have to actually look down and fix this. I work with patients and I'll say, point your toes straight ahead. And when I point their toes straight ahead, they think they're walking pigeon-toed. So you have to regain some muscle memory in doing this correctly. Stride hack number 2, your toes should be pointed straight ahead. I guess I stole my thunder on that. So feet 2 to 4 inches apart and your toes pointed straight ahead. This will, by the way, also help it keep your calf muscles loose. The calf muscles are often tight, not only because you wear heels, ladies, if you're still wearing those, but mostly because people walk with their toes turned out. When you walk with your toes straight ahead, every step you take gives a natural stretch to your calf muscles and keeps them loose. Do not walk toed in or toed out. All right, stride hack number 3, make sure you land on the outside of your heel But then by the time you push off, you should be pushing off your big toe. This yellow line depicts the weight bearing line that should happen. There are a lot of people out there. I know a lot of my patients, almost all of them, when their foot hits the ground, their big toe does not touch the ground. They sometimes push off in the middle of their foot here. And you can tell if you're one of these people because you'll have a callus formation underneath your foot that's not at your big toe. You should be pushing off your big toe. So we say get the big toe on the ground. It's big for a reason. It's the bone that's biggest and ready to take on the force of your body weight and all the ground reaction forces. When you start pushing off the smaller toes, not only are you prone to foot pain, but it makes it so you don't load the biggest muscle of your body. Your butt muscle gets loaded when you push off of your big toe. Big toe is big for a reason. And then stride hag number 4, when you walk, your arms should swing opposite to your legs. This natural swinging of your arms winds up your trunk and wakes up the most important muscles of your back and your stomach. It also flattens your waistline. So if you are forcing having to move your arms, check your feet first, because if you're walking with your feet too far apart, your arms will not swing naturally. The closer together your feet are when you walk, the more your arms and your trunk will swing. All right, so in summary, that was a lot of information for you. Thank you for hanging in there. In summary, you want to put power in your posture. You want to stand strong. You want to take the wall test and make sure that your head and your upper back and your butt touch that wall. You want to do dynamic stretches. So don't do stretches sitting down on your butt, but stand up and do stretches. Seek out some yoga poses. We have some for you here in the end. Straighten your body out by balancing muscles, balancing your shoulder height, and then walk. Make sure you review these stride hacks. Keep your feet close together. Keep your toes pointed straight ahead. Let your arms swing opposite to your legs. And this way, your 10,000 steps a day can give you the maximum amount of benefit. And then we like to say, be office strong all day long. So this is what I'm going to give you. I'm going to send you a handout of this presentation, and I'll send you a full-size copy of this Office Strong Daily Dozen. These exercises were chosen to improve mobility in 3 key areas of your rotation. 12 exercises is a lot. I get it. I tell people you should do all 12 exercises at least once, and you should circle the ones that you hate. The ones that are hard to do or the ones that are not fun for you to do become your go-to exercises. There might only be 2 or 3 or 4 of those. And if you take those few exercises and focus on them for 2 weeks, I promise you, your aches and pains will start to disappear. So this is the Office Strong Daily Dozen. Number 7 and 8 are thoracic spine openers. Number 9 activates the core. Number 10, 11, and 12 are 3 of our favorite exercises from the yoga system that teach your body how to lengthen in 3 planes of motion. So we chose those carefully out of that system to meet the goals that we wanted you to have here at MoveWell. All right. That's my presentation. Are there any questions? Okay, well, this presentation has been recorded and will be available for you to re-listen to or to share with some of your friends if you found the presentation helpful. And Marcia, I'll be sending you the handout.
Great presentation. Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.